All right, welcome on in, friends. We're going to be doing D&D with Moon. This is a walkthrough, and I'm going to tell you about everything we plan on covering tonight. So our objectives are becoming familiar with new, or familiarizing, familiarizing newer returning players to vocabulary words often used in the D&D world. Discuss the different types of play in D&D, and identify what you enjoy the most. Understand ability scores and their modification numbers. Determine what ability scores are commonly used for each class and the basic playing style idea behind each class. Walk through the actions you can take in combat and focus on outside combat actions. So those first big ones. Um, oh my goodness, scared kid, welcome on in. Those first ones are going to be mostly for new players or returning players that haven't played for a while. After that, we're going to get in for some um, more experienced players, but we'll still walk people through. We're going to discuss the pros and cons to some of the major changes presented in the new 2024 book. Thanks for that follow, Blue Eyes. And then we're going to create, if we have enough time, we'll create a 2024 character, and then we have some announcements. I don't want to take this over an hour, though, so hopefully this will be an hour. That way, at the end, we can do announcements and do a giveaway of some Kraken dice. I don't know if any of you guys are little clickety-clackety loot goblins like I am, but I love Kraken dice, so we'll be doing a giveaway of that. All right, getting into some basic vocabulary here. We got the player handbook, and this talks about, the two different editions we have now, 2014 and 2024. Some folks are calling it 5E and 5.1 or 5.5E for the 2024. I really, 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 really recommend getting either a virtual or physical copy of the player handbook in order for you to play. It really helps. Player and player characters, that's going to be whoever's playing the D&D. That's going to be the majority of the people sitting at the table. And then each player gets to control one character that they create. And they determine how that character acts, reacts, and what actions they take is up to the player. Character sheet is going to tell you all about your player. We'll go over like what's actually on your character sheet here coming up in a little bit. But the more detailed your character sheet is, the easier it will be for you to play your character. And there's virtual character sheets now as well. Non-player character is an NPC, and this is one that's going to be controlled by the DM. And who is the DM? That is the Dungeon Master or Game Master. This person is the main narrator of the story/storyteller. Now, here's the difference between a player and their player character and a DM. So the DM is a narrator, while the player characters are the main characters of the story. There's usually only one DM per campaign, although some groups have co-DMs or they like to pass the torch along. One DM will DM one session and then another one will DM another, or they'll run a campaign and then pass it to the next. The DM's job is not to kill the player characters. If that was the case, we would just throw a really hard boss at you at level 1 and just like one-shot you anyways. That's not what the DM is trying to do. The DM's main job is actually to make sure everyone is having fun at the table. So they're the ones that really make sure that the story is immersive, really make sure that the battles are intense, but not to the point where the characters might feel like it's impossible all the time. Make sure that there's a good balance to everything. All right, and then down at the bottom is the number D number. Some examples is 1d20, 3d6, 2d4. So the first number represents how many of a dice you're going to be rolling. The D is just for dice. And then the last number represents which type of dice you're going to roll. So the d20, for example, in 1d20 is a 20-sided dice. That means you can roll a number between 1 and 20 on that. A d6 is a dice that you typically see in most board game sets, where it has 6 sides to it, 1 through 6. So in this example, 3d6, you would roll 3 of those all at once to get the number that you're supposed to get. Moving on, this kind of breaks down like campaigns and some more like grand style of the storytelling. So house rules is a change to the published set of rules the published set of rules is found in that player handbook. So house rules kind of makes their own rules, and the DM and the group as a whole needs to decide on this prior to session one. It would be really unfortunate if a DM was like, "Oh, well, we're going to play this house rule because it puts the NPC at an advantage for this." Or if a player is like, "I want to play this house rule," and then like immediately use it. So house rules should definitely be discussed prior to the first session. Extended rules. There are published rule books that are beyond the regular scope of rule books. So the typical scope of rule books is you're looking at your player handbook. There's a Dungeons Master Guide, and then the Monster Manual. That's your typical rule books, and then anything beyond that, besides campaigns, is considered extended rules. So Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Spelljammer's Adventures are a couple of examples here. Just to let everyone know, so they have currently upgraded the player handbook, the Dungeon Master handbook, and they are releasing the Monster Manual upgrade here shortly. But all these other ones of the extended rule books have not been upgraded to the 2024 version. So just be aware of that. If you are playing on a 2024 character and trying to take um, some expanded rules from expanded books, that might make things not quite as balanced. Homebrew. This can refer to any changes to class, race, or feats that cannot be found in any published content. Most often created homebrews are homebrew races. Because homebrew created elements are not thoroughly tested, it's difficult to determine if a character with a homebrew element will be overpowered in a given situation. It is based on the DM's discretion if a homebrew character can be used in a session or campaign. Basically, you can make your own homebrew if you want to, but it is up to the DM to decide if that will be a good fit for the session or campaign. Session, or also called an episode. This is the single event that a game takes place. Some groups will play between 2 to 4 hours, while others might sit down for a grand 8 hours at the table. I've heard of tables going for 16 hours before, but obviously that's in like a very intense situation, like a con or something. Campaign is a group of sessions or episodes that flow together to tell a larger story. Think of this as the session being like an episode in a movie, or not a movie series, in a TV series. The campaign is that whole season of that TV series. And sometimes if you put the campaigns back to back correctly, then you can make it seem like the TV series has multiple seasons. Um, but in these campaigns, there's usually a main plot line the characters are following throughout each session to bring them closer and closer to the end of the campaign. Now, there's two different types of campaigns. There is a published campaign, which is content that comes from Wizards of the Coast. There's a couple of other third-party companies out there as well that create world and storylines for the Dungeon Master to use. These often include special monsters and special treasures that are not found in the regular set of rule books. Now, a homebrew campaign is where the DM gets to create everything. Usually, they still pull components out of, like um, the monster manual and even some of the other worlds that have been published. But this is where the DM is responsible for creating the whole set of backstories and side quests, as well as the main quest and what the characters are working on throughout the whole thing. Now, one shot is essentially a mini campaign. This is meant for within one table sitting, one session per se, for a story to come to a beginning and end. Commonly, one shots are very combat heavy and do not leave a lot of room for player characters' backstories to be brought into the story. It is possible. It's just a little bit more challenging because you're just expecting to play that one session together with this particular group of players, and then be on your way. Now there is a style of putting one shots together called West Marches, West Marsh campaign. Is that right? This is where The sessions are still one shots, but typically they start and end at the same place so that the next time that a one shot happens, if previous players are available, they can run their characters that came from a previous one shot, and you can kind of mix and match who's at the table and who's not. We're gonna go into a little bit more in depth on gameplay vocabulary. I'm gonna move my camera for this. There we go. Advantage and disadvantage. Both of these are where you roll 2d20 instead of 1d20. With advantage, you're going to pick the higher roll, and with a disadvantage, you're going to pick the lower roll. The reason why you have advantage or disadvantage is going to be explained to you by the dungeon master. But some spells and feats give you advantages, and some spells and feats and conditions are going to give you disadvantages. A marching order is the order in which the player characters travel or enter into a room. Um, Oftentimes, when the DM asks for this, it's because you're about to enter combat and they need to know where all the characters are at. Another reason for this, though, too, is for things like passive perception. Who can see things when? Another good thing to know is proficiencies and proficiency modifiers. Your character at level 1 is going to come well versed in the use or doing of certain actions, allowing you to add your proficiency modifier to the role related to performing this action. You gain proficiency mostly through your class, race, background, and feats, and your proficiency modifier is based off of your character's level. So typically, starting at level 1, your proficiency modifier is +2. You get to add this to, for example, if you are proficient in using a particular weapon, you can add that +2 to your d20 roll. Armor class. This one was really confusing for me for a really long time. Also called AC. So this is the target number for an attack roll to hit a creature. So if your AC is 15, that means if a creature rolls 15, they're going to hit you. If they roll a 14, though, they're not going to hit you. Or vice versa. Say a creature's AC is 10. If you roll a 10, you get to hit them. If you roll a 9, you don't hit them. The higher the number, the harder it is to hit this creature. To calculate your AC, the typical rule is usually you start with 10 plus your dexterity modifier, or there's armor and other features that will teach you how to calculate your AC. And it usually does include your dex, though. Attunement is based on some magical items that require for you to bond or attune with them before you're able to use the magical property of that item. You can only have attunement with 3 items at any given time. This is usually true throughout your character's entire lifespan, no matter if they reach level 20 or not. Saving throw is a d20 roll that determines if you're able to successfully avoid area of effect type spells, conditions attempting to be applied to you, or resist a threat. An ability or rule specifically states if a creature needs to make a saving throw. Difficulty class is the target number you need to succeed a saving throw. And typically, if you have a spell that requires creatures to make saving throws, or if you're using like the Dungeon Master Guide, it tells you what the DC is for whatever condition it is. So, for example, if it's like icy terrain, you might need to make a dexterity DC throw of, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 10, or you're going to slip on the ice and fall on your butt. Death and death saving throws is when your hit points drops to 0, you fall unconscious and will need to start making death saving throws. You don't die right away, friends. Yay, congratulations. At the beginning of your turn, you must roll a d20. There's no modifiers to this roll, and your DC save is 10. Once you make 3 successful death saving throws, you're stable. You don't die. Once you make 3 failed DC saving throws, then you are actually dead. A nat 1 equals 2 failed death saving throws, and a nat 20, you actually regain consciousness with 1 HP. So it kind of adds an element. And technically, once you die too, there's ways to bring you back as well. So just be aware of that. Once you become stable, then once you, I think you can finish a long rest, then or there's so many hours and then you gain 1 HP and then you have to have a long rest in order to heal up all the way. I did not cover long rest and short rest in this. There's so much rules. I meant to explain this at the beginning. There's so many rules and things that I wanted to cover, but I just didn't want to like take up a whole bunch of time. So, um, we're going to talk about some virtual vocabulary because a lot of us have moved into the virtual world of D&D instead of playing in a physical space. So, D&D Beyond, or you guys can see the abbreviations up there. That's a website owned and operated by Wizards of the Coast, which is um, who publishes the majority of D&D content, like the player's handbook. And this includes an online database of all 5e published content. Some of it is completely free, while others, for example, the new 2024 player handbook, has to be purchased. This website is often used though to create virtual character sheets, which is a really nice feature. I was kind of against this at first, but I'm definitely warming up to it because my little binder is getting a little full. Virtual tabletop is what people prefer to call um, a third party website or app, which is used to help create a visual of what is happening. These are most often used to help navigate combat. Some examples of virtual tabletop are Owlbear, Rodeo, Roll20, D&D Beyond, and Foundry. So this is where you can actually like see the map, see where your characters are out on the map, see any creatures on there as well. Oh, Yam is going full on with the details there. Voice is talking about using a third party in order to communicate with voice. Roll20, I do know, has voice integrated in as well, but I notice a lot of people still prefer to use Discord. And then play by post is a completely different style of D&D, where instead of everyone sitting down for a session all together, play by post is where you play kind of throughout the day. So basically, players and DMs post in a chat when they're available too, and all role play, combat, and storytelling is done through those posts. So you never actually like have to sit down, find a couple of hours in the week in order to sit down together. All right, what part of D&D do you enjoy most? I'm gonna keep my camera off for this one because have enough room. This was only in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I thought it was really beneficial. And I think players should understand this too, because once I got to read through this, um, I realized some of the people that I played with fell into these different categories, and I was I don't know how to say this. It made me understand how their thought processes worked more, and I'm someone that likes to understand things. So, there are different types of players for D&D. And being able to identify that means that you can also communicate that to your DM, which means your DM is actually able to make sure that you're more involved into the campaign if you wish so. So there's acting, role playing folks that really enjoy getting into their character and portraying their character's personalities, perspectives, and attitude. You are probably this if you like to develop your character's personality and background. You like regular interactions with NPCs. You role play elements of combat or your backstory. Um, you enjoy when your backstory is being incorporated into the adventure. Explorers are folks that want to experience the wonders that a fantasy world has. What's around the next corner? Really enjoys those sceneries coming in. You might like foreshadowing or finding things. Grand description and interesting maps and props really get your attention. And monsters with secrets to figure out or cultural details to learn about the civilization that you're currently in is something that really fascinates you. Fighting folk are people that enjoy the excitement of battling the baddies. They thrive in combat. Some unexpected surprises and combat really gets them going. Vivid descriptions of the wreckage your character deals out with their attacks and spells is something that you really enjoy. And then a large number of enemies gets you excited as well. There's some folks that like to instigate in game, right? There's some folks that really enjoy instigation. These players are eager to make things happen, even if it's risky. No time for caution. Let's act. So you might be one of these if your actions affect the environment. This is what you enjoy. You enjoy temptations your character can't resist. You enjoy finding yourself in a tight spot because of your actions. And you really like feisty and unpredictable NPCs because you get to be feisty and unpredictable back at them. Um, Optimizing players. These players like to fine tune their character for peak performance by gaining levels, getting new features, and collecting all those magical items. You are probably one of these if you enjoy magic items and find them like little carrots driving your character forward to complete the mission and get the reward. Encounters that let you use that special item or ability that none of the other player characters can use really makes you excited. Getting rewards such as experience points for even non-combat encounters is a nice way to reward you if you are feeling a little dull there. Then there's some problem solver players. These players enjoy figuring out an NPC's motives, determine a villain scheme, solving puzzles, and making plans. You might be a solver if you enjoy puzzles and tricky situations that make you think. Your planning and tactics are rewarded with in-game goodies, and you enjoy complex NPCs. Now, there's socializers. This is one that I really did not understand when I was a player. And the funny thing is, I realized after reading this that my husband is a socializer. Um, and this is one of those situations that I understood him more and I didn't go quite so batty. But these players are really just there for the social event, not in game, the social event with the people at the table and want to spend time with their friends, but might not be entirely invested into the game. And y'all, that is okay. Your character, these person's characters tends to ride the backseat. If it's role playing time, they're not role playing too much. If it's time to go investigating, they might not be investigating too much. Fun happens when your friends are having fun. That's the way these folks think. And then the rules and details of the game aren't really all that concerning. Like I said, there might be some of these people at the table that are like this, and that is completely okay. They're just there to have a good time, so let them have a good time with their friends. Storytelling. Nope. That's nope, Nate. That is not what it means. Storytelling is the last group of people. I would say storytelling would be the political intrigue, Nate. These players want to contribute to the narrative. They want their characters to be tied to the story and enjoy encounters that thickens or progresses the main plot. You might be a storytelling player if you enjoy your characters' backstory shaping stories in the campaign. You might be a storytelling player if encounters that advance the main plot line really get you going. You might enjoy your character's actions molding future events, and then connections with NPCs that allow additional information or adventure opportunities. Like if your character in the backstory knew somebody and then you go and visit them and they are just a little bit extra nice to you, then you might be a storyteller, like if you enjoy that. And then the plot elements that reflect back on decisions. I can't say that word. We're not going to talk about it. It's just going to fall in the miscellaneous bucket, okay? All right. Can we put my camera back on? It's good enough. All right, ability scores and modification numbers. So this is going to be on your character sheet when you're looking at all of that. So there's 6 main abilities. Strength is your physical might, athleticism. This is used to push, pull, lift, or break something. Dexterity is, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jumped over a candlestick. Your agility, poise, reflexes, and balance. It's used to move moved gracefully, quickly, or quietly. Constitution is your health and stamina and is used to push your body beyond normal limits, such as holding your breath, enduring extreme physical conditions. Intelligence is your mental acuity, reasoning, and memory used to calculate, analyze, reason, and remember. Wisdom, your perception, awareness, intuition, and mental fortitude. It's used to notice things in the environment or a creature's behavior. And the last thing is charisma, your confidence, eloquence, and charm used to influence, entertain, or deceive. So, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of numbers over here. What do they mean? So, you have your ability score is on the left hand side. And then that number is going to make an ability modifier. So, for example, if I had a strength of 10, my ability modifier would be +0. So, if I got in a situation where I needed to push or lift or pull things, I would roll my d20 as the DM tells me to. and uh and then I would add +0. That's a really poor example. Let's say I'm trying to be super sneaky, and let's say I'm really sneaky. Let's say I have a 16 in my dexterity. There's other modifiers to this, but we're just trying to be let's say I'm trying to move quietly in a stinky way. So what I would do is I have a 16, so I'd roll my d20, and then I would get to add my +3 to that because I'm very sneaky. So the chances of me succeeding are just higher because I have that +3 modifier. Moving right along. Now that we know what the ability scores are and the modifications, let's talk about how that fits into a class. Each class has a ability score that they use more often. So if you're running that class, you probably want that ability score to be higher. So for example, barbarian up here at the top left, I put strength right there. Barbarians really like their strength. I need to turn and then I also gave a little blurb. So if you're not sure, if you're a new player, you're not sure what you want to play, this sheet right here is a great starting point for you. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but basically, barbarians, strength, they're fierce warriors. Or am I? I might. They go into a battle rage and enter hand-to-hand combat. Bards are normally very charismatic. They're not technically recommended for first-time players. I have a few of these that aren't recommended, and a few that are great for first-time players. That's pertaining to the complexity of the particular character. Typically, if they're not great, it just means that they have a lot of rules, a lot of things that you need to pay attention to. Whereas the ones that are great for first time players are usually ones that they don't have as many rules, or a little bit simpler to follow along. So just a heads up there. And bards are normally like your party buffers typically, but they're able to do a little bit of damage and a little bit of heals, and a little bit of beguiling of the foes. Clerics have wisdom is their main casting ability, and they are priestly companions who wield divine magic in service of a higher power to heal, bolster, and smite. Druids use wisdom. They're a really complex characters because they're able to shape shift, which means you have a lot of different essentially character sheets that you have to pull up very quickly. But they channel nature to heal, shapeshift, and control the elements. Fighters, you can either go a strength fighter or a dexterity fighter, depending on what type of weapons you want to use. They're great for first time players, and they are a master of martial combat, skilled with weapons and armor. A monk is usually uses dex and wisdom. They're typically not recommended for first time players, but they are martial arts, harnessing the power of the body to dart in and out of melee while striking fast and hard. Paladins use strength for their attacks and charisma for their spells. And a holy warrior bound by sacred oath that smites foes and shields allies with divine and martial might. There's also two different types of rangers. There's a long distance ranger and then a dual wielding ranger, but they both use dexterity and wisdom, and they weave together martial prowess and nature magic to combat threats on the edges of civilization. Rogue is always high dex, and these are great for first time players. They do deadly sneak attacks while avoiding harm and overcome obstacles using stealth and trickery. Sorcerers use charisma for their spellcasting ability. These ones are typically not recommended for first time players, and they are a spellcaster who draws an inherent magic shaping the power to your will. Warlocks also use charisma, also not recommended for first time players, and they cast spells that are derived from a bargain with an extraplanar entity. And the last ones are wizards. They use intellect for their spellcasting abilities, and they study arcane magic and master spells through scholarly to manipulate the structures of reality. I will say that spellcasters are a little bit harder to understand, but honestly, if you just have a player's handbook, I think if you're willing to read and just dive in, I think any of the characters are really fun. Any of the classes. Okay. This is where we're really getting into the meat and potatoes, especially for new players. And you guys are being cut off just a little bit. I do apologize. This is going over what you can do in combat. You have 4 different things. You have your movement, your action, your bonus action, and your reaction. So your movement is how far your character can move during your turn. Let me go back a step. Your movement, your action, and your bonus action all take place during your turn. Your reaction usually takes place outside of your turn. There's a couple of things that you can use as reactions during your turn, but for the most part, it usually is outside of your turn. Okay, now we're gonna go to your we got to dance to that. Did Firebright get ads again? Now she doesn't have to do ads anymore. Thank you, Scared Kid, for that gifted sub. All right, so getting back into combat. Your movement is determined based off of the race that you're playing. Your typical movement speeds are about 25 to 35 feet. Each square on the map that the DM presents is usually representative of 5 feet. If it's not, your DM should tell you that. You don't have to move unless you want to. And you don't have to use all of your movement if you do move a little. You also are able to move, take an action, and then move some more. There are a few actions that specifically say that you can't move. Or you have to move in a certain way in order to take that action. So just be aware of that. All right, we're going to do a quick into the actions because there's a lot. So we're gonna go quickly. You can only do one of these unless a certain thing specifically says that you can take a second action. But your action options are you can attack using a melee, not a melee, using a weapon because some of us have bows, using a weapon or an unarmed strike. You can dash, which means you can use double movement speed. This is usually used when you're trying to run away or you're trying to catch up to someone who's trying to run away. Disengage is an action you can take, which means that you're paying attention while you're moving, so you're able to move away from enemies without them taking opportunity attacks. We'll talk about opportunity attacks and reactions. Dodge is where your character is prepared to to move out of the way. Oh my goodness, we just broke the alerts. I don't know what y'all did. Thank you, Gina, for the sub. That was hilarious. Where were we? We were at dodge. So dodge is where um anyone who attacks you until your next turn is going to have disadvantage on their attack. And then you also had advantage on your saving throws. Help is where you help another creature, normally like your friend, in order to make a ability check or attack roll or administer first aid to them. Another option you can do is hide, which is where you're attempting to sneak or make a stealth check. You can also use the influence action where you use your charisma or wisdom to alter a creature's attitude towards you or your party. And then there's also the magic or magic attack. It's where you cast a spell, attack with a spell, or use a magic item or a magical feature. You can also ready any one of these actions, technically. Typically attack, though, or a magic attack. And this is basically where you prepare an action of your choosing in response to a trigger you define when picking this action. So, for example, a really fun ready I listened to the other day was someone readied a spell to hit a target for when another player attacked said target. So if their friend decided to target one thing, then their spell was going to hit that thing at that time too. And then search, you use wisdom check to take a closer look at something. Study is kind of the same thing as it's your intelligence. And it's more of trying to understand something better or learn about something. And then utilizes what you guys can't see, which is using a magical object or item. There's also spells that are bonus actions. Spells and features, I should say. There's certain class features, spells, and abilities that let you take a bonus action. These are very clearly labeled as a bonus action. If a spell or ability does not say it is a bonus action, then it must be taken as an action, and you cannot be taken as a bonus action. You can only take one bonus action on your turn. You choose when during your turn you would like to perform your bonus action unless the specific bonus action you are taking has a specified timing. Anything that prevents you from being able to take an action also prevents you from using a bonus action. Once again, very specified on the spell or the attack that it is a bonus action. It used to be, it still is, but weapons mastery has kind of changed this. It used to be if you were dual wielding, then the second attack was your bonus action. Okay, reactions. This is the one thing that is not during your turn that you're capable of doing. It's an instant response to a trigger that you can take on your turn or on someone else's turn. You can only take one reaction between each round, and it refreshes at the start of your turn. When a reaction interrupts someone else's turn, that creature finishes the rest of their turn immediately after the reaction is played out. A really common reaction is the opportunity attack. An opportunity attack is triggered when a creature that can be seen leaves its foe's reach. So, example, if your character is standing there and it was getting in a fight, we'll just use a giant rat, and the giant rat decides it doesn't want to attack you anymore. It's going to turn around and strike, attacking your friend who's 20 feet away. When that creature turns around and leaves your reach, you are able to take a reaction and do an opportunity attack. It is a melee attack with a weapon or an unarmored strike against the moving creature. You do not use your reaction to make an opportunity attack unless you want to. Other things I've seen reactions used for is if your friend is about to go flying across the map, but they're standing right next to you, you using your reaction to grab them really quickly before the dragon's tail swipes them away. All right, outside of combat things, we've got role playing, ability checks, and storytelling. Role playing aspect. Some players, we've talked about this earlier, really enjoy role playing and storytelling, while some do not. And it's completely okay. There's a couple of different ways you can role play. Some players take on the whole persona of their character, speaking in an accent, using their facial expressions to express how their character looks, using their body and body language to demonstrate the character and what the character is doing and how they are acting. Some players get into it a little bit, but not so much, and they use a more third person approach. They refer to their character by their character's name. Let's say my character's name is Selena. I would say, Selena says, and then I would say what she says, or Selena goes and does this, or Selena begins to fiddle with her hands. That would be an example of a third person approach to role playing. And then some players don't role play at all. They only mention what their character is doing if something or if someone asks them specifically. None of these options are wrong unless the player isn't having fun. Now, storytelling is usually mainly narrated by the DM, but that doesn't mean that the players can't help narrate, right? The player's characters are the main characters of the story. Characters' actions will have consequences in the story. These consequences can be good or bad. So if you role play your character to be a really awful person, before you know it, there might be a lot of people that don't like you. If you role play your character to be really nice and really kind, it could even be where people try to start taking advantage of your character. So just be aware of that. Because there are usually multiple players and only one DM, there will be times where the DM focuses on one player or one group of player characters before getting to the rest of the group. During that time, just have patience. If you want to keep a little hobby close by in order for you to take little breaks while the DM focuses on someone else, just be aware of that. And then interactions between players' characters can be just as important as interactions with NPCs. Sometimes watching players role play between each other, and when they kind of get the group kind of melds together and starts really working as a team, those interactions are just as important as, figuring out what an NPC is up to. All right. Here's some ability checks that can happen outside of combat. And all of these all kind of follow under a ability score. So, for example, athletics falls under strength. So you would get to add your strength modifier to any athletics checks. The hardest ones that I always have to remember is between athletics and acrobatics. Um, Athletics is typically used for how strong you are, whereas acrobatics is usually for being good on your feet. So they don't always mean the same thing, but they kind of be interchangeable. There's a couple of other ones that can kind of be interchangeable, and that'll be based off of the discretion of the DM. Or also if you like want to be like, if a player is just like, oh, but really acrobatic, you could say something like, well, isn't it more of me trying to keep my feet under me and try to you're trying to use that charisma score on your DM basically. But other dex ones are sleight of hands, which is where you're trying to pickpocket someone without being noticed, or conceal an object, or perform magic tricks like card tricks. And then stealth is under dexterity as well. Constitution does not have any ability checks that you have with it, so just be aware of that. But Constitution does change your total hit points. So intelligence has Arcana, which is where you remember anything magical or spell related, and also deals with the planes of existence. History is remembering any historical events. So sometimes DM will be really kind. Like if there's a magic item that is famous in history, they'll let you choose between Arcana or History. Um, Investigation is find information in books, deduce how something works, or search for a certain clue. Nature, recall information about terrain, plants, animals, and weather. Religion, remember information about gods, religion, rituals, and holy symbols. This is also a way to attempt to have a divine appointment with a god or goddess you serve. Wisdom has animal handling, You can calm or train an animal or get an animal to act in a certain way within their given natural scope. Insight is recognize subtle changes in a person that helps you determine their mood and intentions. Medicine is diagnosing an illness, determining a patient's stability, or determine what killed a recent slain creature. Perception is using your senses to notice subtle changes. So, like looking at it, or some perception checks can be hearing and smelling. Survival is identify the creature of tracks, follow tracks, forage in the wild, find a trail, or avoid natural hazards. And then charisma has deception, which is getting away with telling a lie or disguise yourself as something someone else. Intimidation threatens someone to do what you want. Performance acting, telling a story, performing music, or dancing. And then persuasion is honestly convincing someone, negotiating for better prices, or a trade in your favor. All right, we are now getting in to the 2024 major roleplay changes. First up, we're going to go with background. Backgrounds have now changed to have all of these features. It kind of I don't know why that popped up. That can go away. Thank you. Thank you, Blizzard. It kind of evens them out a little bit. There used to be some backgrounds where you got a lot more gold or a lot more equipment. So that kind of evens things out. It also used to be where certain races gave you, because there's some race change as well. We didn't go into that too much, actually, at all on these slides. It kind of evened the scopes because there used to be races that gave extra ability score improvements compared to others. So now everyone just gets 3 ability score improvements under the background. Each background, you get 3 ability score options. You can either choose to put 1 point in each of them, or you can choose to put 2 points in one and 1 point in another, and then 0 in the third. You also get 1 feat. We'll go over feats here in a minute. 2 skill proficiencies, 1 tool proficiency, and then a set of equipment, or 50 gold. The tool proficiencies are definitely a lot more common in the 2024 handset as well. I didn't go for that as well. But I do like how they kind of made this simpler. It's not simplifying. They made it more even across the scale. And I think it really does end up causing you to have more options in the long run, to be honest. All right. If you're watching the YouTube video, you might want to pause here. We're not going to go over all of these. We don't have the time. But this goes over all the options for the backgrounds. We're going to shrink this down here. That's not what I wanted. The other. Yeah. Going. See everything now. Okay. Yeah, you guys should be able to see everything now. Sorry about that. I would pause the video here and take a look. See, this is all the information provided, and the book was set for like the backstory bit. So we're gonna keep on moving on though. Copyright, you know. Anywho, another major change to the rules is the feats. Now everyone gets 1 feat based off of their background. We've gone from, in the 2014 set of rules, we had about 40 some feats, and now we have about 75 feats to choose from. Because we're going to so many feats, they have categorized the feats. Not here. Like okay, we're just gonna have to get over that. We had the origin feats, which are the feats that you get from your background. There's general feats, which you have to, most of them have qualifications that you need to hit, but those are ones that you can pick up as you level. There's fighting style feats, which are mostly pertaining to the fighter, class. And then there's epic boons, which you can get at level 19, I believe. Some some feats do have prerequisites, and some feats are repeatable. So just be aware of that. If it does not mention that it's repeatable, then it's not repeatable. And these are all the origin feats. We have alert, and you'll notice that each of these have um no, not all of them have proficiency. Um Yeah, because like the Tavern Brawler doesn't have proficiency anything. But these are all the different feats that you can possibly get. So if we go back to the previous screen, um, some of these, so let's take a look at Criminal. Their feat is alert. So then you'd come over here. They get initiative proficiency. So you can add your proficiency bonus to your initiative roll. An initiative swap. Swap your initiative with one willing ally immediately after making your initiative roll. You or your ally cannot have the incapacitated condition in order to do that. So, um, something that I'm going to talk about next. And then we'll get to the pros and cons to all of these changes after. Because the big one that changes a lot is the weapons mastery rule. This is a major change that they made. Now each weapon has a mastery ability. So, for example, if you have a weapon that has cleave as the mastery and you are a master in that weapon, then when you hit a creature with a melee attack with this weapon, you can make a melee attack roll with the same weapon against a second creature within 5 feet of the first attack that is also within your reach. On a hit with the second attack, the second creature takes the weapon's damage, but you do not apply your ability modifier to that damage unless it is negative. You can only use this once per turn. As you can see, this basically means that you get to hit 2 creatures with one attack action. So that means, you could take this and then you'd still even have your bonus action. So you have to be a master though in that specific weapon in order to use the master feat or the weapon's mastery of it. Every single weapon has been given a mastery component to it. um and yeah, that's basically that for the rule. Um the thing I like about this between all 3 changes here is in the 2014 rule set, a lot of times DMs and player groups would decide to start at level 3 or level 5 instead of starting the campaign at level 1. And the reason for that was because level 1s were often seen as boring. They didn't have a lot of options on how to gameplay, and they didn't have a lot of ways to personalize the character. You get a lot more spell options and a lot more other options once you hit level 3 and level 5. And so that's why people usually did that. It's not the case for everybody, but with the 2024 rule set, what I'm finding is it's making the level 1 characters a lot stronger, which hopefully in theory will cause DMs and groups of players to start at level 1 and then authentically level their characters up. Um, so that's one pro. A con right now that a lot of DMs are feeling is that um, the the monster manual hasn't been updated yet. So it's really hard to balance a good fight between a level 1 character and a level 1 2024 character with the appropriate CR rating, which is challenge rating, um, with the old challenge rating from 2024 from the 2014 monster manual. Basically, what it means is that characters using weapons mastery and then these feats that add spells from other classes, um, and a lot of these other bonuses, it's causing level 1 characters to basically just one shot monsters that used to be difficult for them. Uh, Some options, are just throw more of the same monsters at them, which just means that it can sometimes take longer for a round to be completed. Um, but you can't throw harder monsters at them because the HP, the hit points of characters hasn't been increased. And so if you just throw harder monsters at them, then you're just going to one shot them on accident, which we talked about earlier how the DM's job is not to kill you. Um so that's a con. Another con, especially with these weapons mastery, is is that it makes it more complicated. Which if you're a new player, um sometimes even just looking at, this section here and trying to remember all the rules of, what you can do in combat, it's already complicated enough. But then we add these weapons masteries, where if you're using a certain weapon and how do you know you're using that weapon, and before you know it, if you're not familiar with the player handbook or these special abilities, you're flipping through your book a lot. And that's one reason why I said earlier that I'm starting to really love the virtual character sheets, because I used to sit there and write out all my character sheets, and you'd have to write out each ability, or I'm not going to pull them out because they're a little bit difficult to get to right now. There used to be spell decks, and so you'd get a card that had the spell on it. I have spell decks for every single class from 2014. Um, and so basically what I would do is when a session is about to begin is I'd pull out all the spells that my character knows. That way I didn't have to flip through my player handbook when I was planning on casting a spell. So those are the pros and cons that I'm seeing with the 2024 rule changes. But I think once the monster manual comes out, it should iron out some of it, hopefully. Hopefully. We're gonna go ahead and move on. We're not gonna make a character tonight because we are at 58 minutes in. Um, we'll touch a little bit more on that here in a second. All right, announcement time. I'm really excited for this. I've been holding this back for so long. I've been doing so much research on this presentation and more because we wouldn't have this beautiful graphic made by the amazing Luna Lumos if we were just going to be using it once. No, we're planning on using it more because starting like soon, I'm going to be DMing one shots for Unity Gaming. I'm going to be DMing two shots for Unity Gaming. We're going to start this off with a week of D&D. It's going to start actually this Sunday. Yeah, week of D&D is going to start on the 19th. We're going to have a one shot or two shot every single night, 5 nights in a row. So starting Sunday the 19th all the way through Thursday the 23rd. Um, and this is going to go on for three months of D&D action. To that point, I'm not sure. I've never DM'd before. I've done a lot of research into it. I played a lot as a player. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna like D&D. So I'm gonna guarantee this for 3 months. And if I like it, we'll keep going. If I don't like it, then we'll stop. But what I'm planning on doing is doing this in a West Marsh style, where people can go and come into the D&D world as they are available. We will be starting all characters at level 1. We will only be using the 2024 player handbook for creating characters. And I currently have a couple of one-shots planned. And the first one is actually going to be on Thursday night at we'll say 9:30 p.m. Eastern. There's going to be a whole new section set up under not a new section, but a new form set up under the D&D section. That's going to be D&D with Moon. where you'll be able to easily sign up for one shots there, be able to ask any DM questions there, and then also talk about the amazing adventures your characters have inside of the Unity Guild Hall. Uh yeah. Oh, we have to talk about our resources. That way I don't get copyright infringement. I used the 2024 and 2014 Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook published by the Wizards of the Coast, and then also some information from the 2024 Dungeon Master Guide. Let's go, friends. All right. We're back to this screen because